I'm 12 years old. I picked up the phone. Hello? Honey, find your mom. There's been an accident. When I was a kid, my dad worked at U.S. Steel. It was a steel mill in northern Indiana, and my mom stayed home and raised us. And he was an electrician at the steel mill, and one day he was working on this huge electrical panel, and he was in there with the screwdriver. His buddy Bill was in there with the flashlight, and the electrical panel, for whatever reason, didn't get tagged right. So somebody came along, noticed that the panel was off, and they turned it on. And boom! It created a huge explosion, caught my dad on fire, burned him on 40% of his body from the top of his head down. And buddy Bill, his arm was severely burned from the fire and the blast. I didn't see my dad again for the next couple of months. I was a kid picking up the phone and hearing, honey, find your mom, there's been an accident. I had a surge of fear and panic. I didn't know what to do, what to make of it. My mom happened to be at the grocery store at the time. I was by myself. We didn't have cell phones, so I couldn't call her. I didn't know what to do. So I called my Uncle Donnie, who worked at the steel mill. Seems like they all lived at the steel mills back then, pulling doubles, and they were always working, right? Just trying to put food on the table. I call him up. I'm like, Uncle Donnie, they called and they said there's been an accident. I don't know what to do. I started crying, and he said, it's okay. I'll find your mom. I'll be right there. And even now, it was horrifying. And in that moment, my brain changed. Well, not really my brain, but the beliefs that were in my brain, the software that runs in my computer brain changed. And what happened was I started believing that something bad could happen at any moment, that the rug can just get yanked out from underneath you. One day everything's fine, and the next day your whole life has changed. And I didn't see my dad for the next couple of months. We didn't know if he was going to live or not. He was our sole source of income, so all of a sudden we're having a bigger difficulty now financially. My mom is living at the Loyola Burn Unit in Chicago because she was trying to help him survive and live through this. And so all of a sudden my sister and I were living at my grandma and grandpa's house, and they were stressed too, and it was so emotional, and I was just so scared, full of anxiety, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. And then I remember a couple months later when I finally did get to see my dad, I have horrible memories of walking through a burn unit. You can imagine. And when you're a kid, hearing people screaming and yelling and in agony and pain. And then they didn't take us into my dad's room. They wheeled him out in a wheelchair, and it didn't look like my dad. It looked like a mummy. He was literally wrapped from head to toe, and his legs were even wrapped because they were taking skin grafts, which means they were pulling skin off of his legs, big pieces of skin off his legs, and attaching it to his body. And so when they did that, then they'd wrap him all up, and then blood would seep through. And my father came in, and he didn't talk really, and he was just sitting there, and we were trying to hug him, but we weren't really supposed to touch him that much. And I'm short, I'm 12 years old, and I'm looking at his hands, and his fingernails are all burnt off, and my brain is just on like overdrive, just completely freaking out right now, scared to death of what's happening in this moment. And those beliefs would shape my whole life. And I ended up struggling with anxiety, worry, fear, insecurity, self-doubt. I had trouble with anger, with trusting people, because I was so scared, and I never quite got over it from childhood. And when you're afraid, you seem to attract more scary things into your life. Like, I swear I had bully radar going through middle school and dealing with all the bullies. They just seemed to know that I was insecure. And man, I just attracted every bully that went through our school. And so then my brain got reinforced again. The world's not safe, that you're not going to be okay, that something bad might happen right when you turn the corner. And a lot of times it did happen, but many times it didn't. But it was like there was this fire alarm that was in my brain that kept being pulled over and over and over again, even though there wasn't a fire. My brain was still reacting like there was. It's kind of like what people mean when they say you have post-traumatic stress. Post means after. You have this traumatic experience, and then afterwards, you're still traumatized by it. You still have the memories of it. You still have the feelings that come up every time you think about it. Sometimes those feelings come up when you're not thinking about it. And out of the blue, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death, or I'm freaking out, or I'm having a panic attack, or it'll come out through anger or through frustration. And then we try to figure out how to deal with those feelings. So we turn to what our society has told us will help. And our society, unfortunately, has told us that eating a bunch of junk food will make you feel better. Smoking cigarettes will make you feel better. Taking prescription drugs will make you feel better. Shopping will make you feel better. Gambling will make you feel better. And I'm sure you've realized by now that those solutions only tend to make us feel worse. They might feel better in the moment, but then they make us feel worse afterwards. It's like a win-lose situation over and over and over again. And, human beings have this really weird habit of trying to avoid pain by doing things that create more pain. But that's what we've been taught. If you go to the doctors, that's what the doctors tell you to do. Take this pill, take that pill. Even when you go to psychologists or psychiatrists, often their advice doesn't really change much. It doesn't really help much, especially the therapies that they taught, a long time ago, where you just sit there and listen to people or try to teach them how to be more positive in their thinking. I don't know about you, but that has not changed. That did not change how I felt. It didn't get rid of my anxiety. In fact, a lot of times I felt like people were saying, well, it's all in your own head, like it's your fault. That made me feel even more like a loser. Like, oh my gosh, not only do I feel horrible, but it's my fault. And oh my gosh, it just set me on this path to try to figure out how to escape my anxiety. I didn't know it was called anxiety. I didn't know what anxiety was. I just note that my stomach was in a knot, that I had tightness in my chest, that I tend to think about the worst possible situations happening, because every once in a while they did. And I just walked around feeling stressed and angry and upset and overwhelmed. And then I acted out in a lot of really poor ways because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how else to change that feeling. And it put me on this path that I wasn't expecting to go on. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And when I was 17, I started to be a senior in high school, and I enrolled in my first psychology class. Psychology 101. It's just an introduction to psychology at the high school level. And it was a field of study where they teach you why people think the way they think, and why people feel the way they feel, and why people behave the way that they behave. And that there was actually tools that you could use. They would call them interventions, which sounds big and scary, but it was just different tools or techniques that you could use to shift how you feel. And I thought, I want that. I want to learn how to do that, because I would love to do that for myself. And I would also love to do that for others, because a lot of times when we have a lot of insecurity, it makes us more compassionate towards others. And it also, because we know how others might be feeling because we felt really bad, so it does create a little bit more compassion. Not always. Sometimes it can make you cold and turn you, just shut you down and put big boundaries so you just don't let anybody get close to you. If you meet people and they just seem mean or hostile or aggressive, what they're secretly trying to do is keep everybody at bay, because they think that if they let you in, you're going to hurt them. And so they just are aggressive and abrupt right off the bat. That's often what's happening psychologically. Now, I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know a lot of the stuff that I'm going to share with you now after being in the field for 32 years. But this was in the very beginning of my journey. And through this training, I want to help you understand what I learned from providing thousands of coaching sessions, from getting advanced degrees in psychology, from getting certifications in other peak performance fields, and then doing session after session after session, hour after hour after hour, days, weeks, months, years, for 3 decades. I want to teach you what I learned about how your mind works, what I learned about things like anxiety, self-sabotage, worry, fear, anger, stress, how you can have the best intentions and then show up in that situation and it all goes up in smoke and it's like, what happened? I was going to do this and I did that. How is that possible? Or I'm totally motivated and then the time arises and I'm procrastinating again. I can't get myself to follow through. Why does that happen? Why do we feel stuck? Why do when we sometimes get what we want, we're still not happy? These are the questions I wanted answers to. How do I feel peaceful? How do I change my life? How do I change my destiny? And so when I was going to school for psychology, these are the questions that I wanted to learn. So in high school, I decided that this is what I want to do. And then, of course, I had a high school advisor tell me that because of my grades, I'll never get into college. So luckily, for whatever reason, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. And if someone told me I couldn't do something, I'd be like, oh yeah, watch me, right? And it was that rebellious part of me that would come out, right? That part of me that felt like, if you're telling me I can't do it, oh, I'm gonna do it. And I know where that came from. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I used it to drive me forward. And the thing about anxiety is not only does it sometimes make you more compassionate about other people's feelings, but it also can cause you to want to help other people. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to figure out how to help myself and then help other people. Now, at the time, I wanted to help other people so that I could feel special. It was about my ego. When I had no self-confidence, I wanted to have self-confidence. When I felt like I was the last person people would pick to be on their team, standing in a gym, and I was the last one people would call to be on their team. It wasn't because I wasn't competent. It was because I was so insecure I wouldn't let myself go for it. I was too afraid of how I was going to look, or that people were going to tease me or make fun of me because that happened. And so I would sabotage myself. I would hold back. I wouldn't play full out. I wouldn't be my authentic self because I didn't know what that was. And I was just coming from a place of fear. Now, I wouldn't have maybe said that I was afraid, or maybe I wouldn't have admitted it. But these unconscious experiences that I was going through, unconscious means that you're not aware of something. It's happening outside of your awareness. That's what unconscious means. It's happening outside of your awareness. Okay? Well, all these experiences were going on in my unconscious mind, and I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know anything about conscious or unconscious mind or beliefs or self-sabotage or anxiety. I didn't know what any of those terms were. I'm growing up in the 70s and early 80s. I don't know what any of these terms are, right? They're pretty common now. My kids, I have a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old, and they know what these words are, but I did not, right? I knew what sarcasm was because everybody was sarcastic. Everybody was ripping on each other. Everybody was cutting each other down. But I didn't know what inner peace was. I didn't know what self-love was. I didn't know that you have the power to be able to change how you think, which changes how you feel, which changes how you believe. And how you behave. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. When you change what you believe, it changes how you behave. But I didn't know any of that stuff. And so I figured I'm going to find a way to get into that college. And I applied to different colleges and got turned down. And that just reinforced that you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, which is a belief I had in my mind that I did not know was there. And I just thought, life just is hard, and maybe, God doesn't like me. I didn't really like myself very much at the time either. But then I applied to a local college and got in on probation. Hey, if you take these extra courses on math or English. Now, I thought I was kind of dumb. I wasn't. I just didn't apply myself, and I heard that so many times. Have you ever heard that? You just don't apply yourself. Well, I was too busy trying to get people to like me to study. I was too busy trying to be the class clown so people would like me so I could feel accepted. And I would get in so much trouble because I couldn't keep my mouth shut because I just wanted people to like me so much that I would get in trouble for it. So I didn't focus a lot on grades. And when I thought about studying, it just made me feel dumb. I was so focused on not getting a good grade that I didn't even want to study. And that turns out to be what procrastination is all about. When we associate pain to the actual outcome, our brain says, well, I don't want that, so we push away from it. And then, until we panic and we're like, I got to do something, and then we try to cram for the test at the last minute, and then that doesn't work out, and then you get the bad grade, and then your brain says, see, I told you this is what was going to happen. Not because it was how it actually was. It wasn't that I was dumb or not good enough or not a good student. None of that was the case, as I proved that wrong in grad school. But it was because I wasn't studying. It was because I had a belief that it wasn't going to turn out. What I learned from all these years is that your beliefs, what you believe about yourself, which a belief is just an opinion that you feel is a fact. A belief is just an opinion. It's an idea. like the belief that the world is a loving place or the world is a cruel place, those are just opinions, right? A fact is that the world is oval. People used to think the world was flat, but it's oval. That's a fact, right? But an opinion of what kind of world we live in, that's subjective, which means that that's just your idea or your interpretation of it, but it's not the reality. Okay, so I had all kinds of beliefs, and you do too, that were empowering me, but also that were sabotaging me. We all have beliefs as human beings that lift us up and hold us back. And it's often we don't know what the beliefs are. We don't even know that that's happening. And if you're not aware of something, how are you supposed to change it or fix it? And then I learned that a lot of the tools that people were using to try to change beliefs were really hard to use, and it took a long time, and people would go to therapy for years and still not get the results they were looking for. And in our culture today, you just will take a pill. A pill will change everything, which is a total lie. Pills don't change habits. Pharmaceuticals do not change emotional habits. But the people that sell those pills and the doctors that write prescriptions for them all the time, they don't know what else to do, so that's what they do. So the pharmaceutical companies are making money. That's why they do it. But a lot of the doctors out there, that's what they've been trained to do. A hammer sees a nail. A doctor gives a pill. That's what they do. Okay? Even psychiatrists are more medical doctors that give prescriptions. Very few psychiatrists actually sit down and talk to patients. They just listen to them for a couple minutes, give them scripts, right? Psychologists, social workers, therapists, counselors, they're the ones that are supposed to be changing what's going on inside. And I've learned that most of them don't have very good tools either. I learned a lot of those tools, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I decide that I'm going to go back or I'm going to get into this college and I'm going to start taking these psychology classes. And that's what I did. I started taking psychology classes, and that's when I started learning how your mind works, at least in a basic way. I learned that certain people believe, because, you have different philosophies. Just like some people are Democrats, some people view themselves as Republicans, some people view themselves as libertarians, some people would say they're very conservative, some would say that they're much more liberal. These are all just labels for, how we try to label ourselves or what we identify with. Okay. And so in psychology, there were some people that said that we're more like robots and we only respond to pleasure and pain, rewards and consequences. Other people are like, no, we have this other type of energy inside of us. We call it a mind, and our mind has a conscious mind, an unconscious mind, a superconscious mind, and everybody had theories. And I tried to understand and take the best of all those theories and come up with something practical that can help you get results right now. How can you change the way you're feeling right now? How can you improve a behavior right now? I don't want to spend 20 years figuring it out. Do you? I doubt it, right? We want to get results as fast as possible, and we want results that are going to last, and we want to do it in a way that's empowering and comforting. We don't want to do it in a way that's hard work and difficult and confusing, because that doesn't work. People don't follow through. They just quit, right? So that was my goal. I'm going to learn all this stuff. I'm going to try to figure out how to make it work for me, and once I figured it out for me, I want to share it with others. So let me break down a little bit of your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, and your superconscious mind, and what the heck that means. So your conscious mind is the analytical part of you, the logical part of you, your prefrontal lobes, this part of your brain. Your conscious mind is the part of you that's taking this information in right now. It's looking, listening, watching, learning, feeling. Okay, it's the part of you that decides this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. It's that logical, analytical part of you, okay? And that part of you, it turns out, controls about 20% of what you do. Your logical part of you, even if you think you're a highly reasonable human being, turns out that only 20% of the decisions that we make are based on what we're telling ourselves in the moment. Most of the decisions have already been made for us by our unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind controls about 80% of what you do. It has two functions. First, it keeps your heart beating, it keeps your lungs breathing, it keeps all your autonomic systems, your blood is circulating, your stomach is digesting food. You don't have to think about any of that. It's just happening. When you decide I want to get up and walk to the kitchen, you don't say, okay, foot, move, shift, down, lean here. You're not doing any of that. You're just getting up and walking for most of us, right? Because It's been learned, it's been automated, it's become a habit, it's become a set of reflexes that are stored in your unconscious mind. So that part of your mind is on autopilot, helping you live and function. It also is the part of you that runs your beliefs. Okay, so your beliefs are your life's rules. They're in your instructions, for what you believe is happening in life. Okay, so let me give you another metaphor. Imagine that your brain is like a computer. And your brain, like I have my iPhone here, okay? Your brain is like a computer. This phone has a computer in it, okay? Now, this phone runs apps, which are like computer software. Computer software tells the computer what to do, and then the computer does it. So I've got software apps in here that'll play music, that'll write stories, right? I can do Word documents that'll calculate. I've got a calculator in here. It's got a camera in here. It has all these different functions, okay? And so what computers do is they run programs. Well, your brain is the most powerful computer that's ever been designed. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's more powerful than any computer that we have on this planet. And if I gave you $1 trillion and said, go build a human brain, you couldn't do it because people have spent billions and billions and probably $1 trillion trying to recreate the human brain, and they haven't been able to do it, which means that you have a brain that's priceless. You, right now, have a brain that's over $1 trillion. I mean, do you realize how much money $1 trillion is? You could take it and stack it and wrap it around the world a few times. Of dollar bills, and just wrap it around the world, a bunch of times. That's how much money $1 trillion is. In your brain, you are worth more than that. So what beliefs are they are like computer programs. So common beliefs are, I feel good about myself, or I don't feel good about myself. I have strong confidence. No, I have low self-esteem. I can speak in front of public, in front of a group. No, I can't speak in front of a group. Okay. Now you can, but we have a belief. If it tells us that we can't, we won't, right? We will feel like we literally can't, but our unconscious mind is causing us not to because it thinks that there might be pain involved, and your brain's always trying to avoid pain and create more pleasure in your life. So if you think that I can't be a public speaker and then you get yourself out of it and then you feel relief, that is a pattern. That is a belief that's running in your mind that's keeping you from being a public speaker. If you go change that belief, then all of a sudden you can do it. I mean, I went from not being able to speak in front of a crowd to being able to speak in front of tens of thousands of people and loving it. I started out, I was so scared to speak in front of people that my eyelids would twitch. I thought they were going to fly right off my head. My hands would shake. I might feel like my throat was closing in. I was so scared to speak in front of people. And now I do it for a living and I love it. Okay. So if I told myself that I can't speak in front of people, that would have been a lie because I have, right? But I had a belief, a software program in my mind that told me that it was impossible. And so it felt that way. When I changed the belief, what was once impossible now became possible. If you take the word impossible and you underline the first two letters in that word, now it looks like I'm possible. And you are. Anything you want to experience or accomplish in your life, within reason, you can accomplish, right? So people say, oh yeah, well, I'm 5 feet tall and I want to play in the NBA and I'm 65 years old. All right, well, you're probably not going to be in the NBA, but you could go watch the NBA. You could become a fan, you could sell tickets. There's other ways where you could be a part of that experience. But what people do is they shut the whole thing down. They find excuses for why it won't work, and then they shut everything down. That's because of their beliefs that they had when they were kids that they formed that tell them that they can't have what they want, that they're not good enough. So your unconscious mind stores all of these ideas, all of these opinions of what you think is possible. I can lose weight. I can't lose weight. It's impossible, right? I can't stop this addiction of smoking, or I believe I can and I'm gonna, right? You can go and list everything that there is when it comes to a belief, right? You either believe you can or you believe you can't. And then you fill in the blank what it might be, whatever your goal is. If you're struggling to achieve a goal, it's because there is a belief in your unconscious mind that's getting in your way. And you probably don't know what it is. Most people don't. And that's okay. I'm going to help you figure that all out as we go through this training. Okay? So I decided that I wanted, start understanding more of this. And so your conscious mind is the part of you where you're kind of talking to yourself all day and you're imagining things in your mind and you're making decisions. Your unconscious mind is more getting you to do stuff, though, or getting you not to do stuff. And you don't even realize that it's happening. So your unconscious mind is really the more powerful part of you. Let me give you another quick metaphor. Imagine that you're sitting on a big, giant African elephant, and you're on a safari. Okay, so you're sitting on this big elephant, and this elephant represents your unconscious mind, your emotional mind, okay, the part of you that holds your beliefs. And you sitting on top of the elephant is like your conscious mind. So your conscious mind, you might be thinking that you're steering the elephant where you want that elephant to go. But if that elephant gets spooked or gets scared or wants to run a different direction, there really isn't anything that you're going to be able to do except hold on tight. You can hit it with a stick, and that elephant is so much more powerful that it's going to go where it wants to go, and we just have to hang on. And when we sabotage ourselves, that's what's happening. When we say we want one thing and then we don't do it, we don't show up, we don't follow through, we get scared, we chicken out, that's what's happening. The elephant has taken over, okay? Your emotional mind has taken over. And so what we want to do is convince the elephant to think the way that we want to think. So that instead of you as sitting on top of the elephant and then the elephant fighting each other, what you do is you get both of you on the same page, heading in the same direction. That's when the real magic happens, when you get your unconscious mind to want the same thing that you consciously desire. That's when magic happens. And during this program, I'll help you understand how to do that. Okay? So that's what happens with your unconscious mind. Then some people say we have a superconscious. What's that? Well, depending on what you believe, our superconscious is connected to the universe or connected to God, right? That is the higher power, the inner wisdom that we all have access to, even though many times we might not feel connected to it. Sometimes people say that your subconscious or your superconscious is like a little kid in a football stadium during the Super Bowl trying to get your attention. It's so noisy in there that you can't hear him or her, all right, the little kid. And so your superconscious is the part of you that's always trying to get you to do the right thing. Your superconscious is the part of you that gives you ideas for how you could actually make dreams come true. Whether you follow those ideas or not, whether you take those actions or not, whether you look for those clues and then put them into action, well, that's really depends on what you believe about all of that stuff in your unconscious mind, in the back of your mind. Okay, so what we want to do is recognize that there's a part of us that is trying to help us. That's why we have a conflict. That's why you are watching this instead of just saying or listening to this, instead of just telling yourself, well, there's no chance that I'm going to ever achieve my goal. Well, there's a part of you that says there has to be, and that's your superconscious right now getting you to watch this. Okay, trying to figure out how to help you succeed. And if you go through this, you will. Okay, so you just got to know the right combination. Imagine you have a combination that has everything you want in that safe, but you don't know the combination, or maybe you got 2 of the 3 numbers. And it will feel impossible to get that door open. But if you have the 3rd number of that combination, all of a sudden click and the door opens and there's your treasure. So have you ever had a feeling that I should do something and then you didn't listen to yourself, or you asked somebody else and you did what they said, and then afterwards it turned out you should have listened to yourself, and then you're like, why didn't I listen to me? Okay? Well, that was your superconscious trying to help you out. Why you didn't listen to yourself is because you have a belief in your mind that I can't trust myself or I'm not good enough. We call these limiting beliefs. Right? I have to do what everybody else says, or they're going to get mad at me, or they're going to tease me, or they're going to abandon me. All these fears that develop when we're little. Okay? These are called self-limiting beliefs because they limit your ability. They hold you back from your full potential. They keep you from being the person you were born to be. What some will say, your authentic self, where you're showing up being who you are and not making excuses for it. And if someone has a problem with it, that's their problem, not yours. Okay, because most of the time the people have the problems with you being who you really are have their own problems, have their own issues. Okay, they're leaking them onto you. They're not doing what's best for you. They're caught in their own control dramas because of what's going on with their insecurities. I remember I had a client one time when she realized that her issues that she was struggling with weren't really about her at all. It was her mom's issues, and her mom leaked those issues onto her, right? And when she realized that's not my stuff, that's my mother's stuff. When she realized that, she's like, oh my gosh. And it was like this incredible freedom. I watched her just sit there and cry and laugh in her chair. Oh my gosh, that's not my stuff. That's not my stuff. She didn't have to deal with it or wrestle with her worries and fears because that really wasn't what she believed anyway. She just got caught up in it because that's what her mom was going through. And when you're a kid, you absorb what your parents go through. And she didn't know that. And when she realized that's not my stuff, I remember her all the way down the hallway, leaving out the front door of my office, going, that's not my stuff. That's not my stuff. Like a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted off of her. And I saw her a week later, and she had transformed. She had realized that she didn't have to do that stuff anymore. She upgraded a belief that kept her stuck out of guilt. And she was able to release that guilt and then change that belief. And then she was able to start finally taking care of herself and feeling good about it instead of feeling guilty about it, which changed her life. And that was amazing. So I have countless stories of people who have had these amazing experiences. And I'm going to tell you about several of them just so that you recognize how powerful you are. Because every single person that I tell you about, they have the same mind, they have the same nervous system, they have the same physiology. Right? Our brains work the same way. Human beings have this clever, strategy, or this strategy that's kind of it. When we were cavemen and women, if someone was different than us, it meant danger, and so, we would fight or we would run away. But that was like 500,000 years ago, and we're still acting that way now. If someone looks different, if someone acts different, if someone talks different, if someone lives in a different place, all of a sudden it's a threat and it's a danger. And that is such a self-sabotage, and especially where we need to be with our culture and our society today. We need to come together, trust each other, see each other as an asset, collaborate with one another, and become stronger as a humankind instead of, labeling ourselves as different from everybody else. Well, you're this and I'm that, so you're wrong and you're evil and I'm good and I'm great, and you have a lie and this is the truth. All of that is baloney. That's all make-up stuff that we do in our brain to try to feel special, to try to feel safe, to try to figure out who we are. And so much of that is dysfunctional. So much of it divides people and holds us back. So I started going through these classes in psychology and learning more about how the mind works. And I got to tell you, the more I learned, the more skeptical I became. In my mind, I had a mindset of prove it, right? I'm hearing all this stuff. It hasn't made me feel any better. Prove it. Prove that it works. Because I was hearing all these theories and I was hearing all these experiments that people did, but it wasn't changing my anxiety. It wasn't changing how I was feeling. I was still scared. I was still stressed. I was still feeling overwhelmed. I was still broke. I was still just barely getting by. I wasn't very nice to people in my relationships. I was still very sarcastic and cutting people down instead of lifting people up. It wasn't changing my experience, and so I had a lot of skepticism. So as we go through this, if you have skepticism, I get it. I was right there with you. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not buying it. I was very much, prove it to me. I need to see it with my own eyes. And for the next year, I was taking this information in and learning from psychology, but I wasn't seeing any breakthroughs. I wasn't watching any amazing miracles happen in front of me. And so, I was just like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep going through these courses and try to survive college and figure out, what I can do to get by. And it wasn't until something pretty amazing happened that I want to share with you in the next video. But I want to ask you this. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you really had to test yourself and put into action what you've been telling yourself? Like, have you ever had a situation where you tell yourself, you know what, I have changed, I've become better, I'm going to do things better, I'm going to really show up in a new way? Or people, I remember all the time, used to say, I found Jesus. right? Now take me back and everything's going to be better. And then 2 weeks later, they were right back to doing what they were doing again, being very self-destructive and selfish. Okay. But have you ever been in a situation where you were ready to prove that something transformed inside of you? Well, that's what I want to tell you about next with a client of mine named Wendy. Okay. Fast forward years later, and I'm about to walk into an elevator with someone who absolutely declared that she was claustrophobic. Do you know what happens when you take someone who's been claustrophobic for 40 years and you throw them into an elevator? I know what happens, and I'm going to tell you about that in the next video.